very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. What I would like to present now is a result of a 2-year project that we did at the University of Amsterdam with an interdisciplinary team of lawyers, economists, and social scientists. And we dusted off an idea that was quite popular some time ago, and that's the Kulturflatrate idea, which is, is it possible to change the regime and try to finance culture not through the market, but rather through a license system which is managed by, or at least statutorily proposed by the state, and which is actually a levy tied into an internet subscription, which collects money and then distributes it amongst rights holders, and which in turn would legalize the non-commercial private use, online uses, some of which are licensed currently, some of which are illegal. And there have been many studies on this, but we thought that those studies were not really good enough, because what they asked is, would you be willing to pay like 10 euros for the ability to download music? And who wouldn't say yes to get these survey people go away to such a question? So we think that despite the best efforts, the method to ask such questions were not really good, because what we are trying to establish here is a willingness to pay for a public good. It's and it has a methodology. It was developed in environmental economics, trying to put a price tag on clean air or clean water. So it has a very highly sophisticated methodology which was not put in this question, and we tried to replicate that and go into the details of how to design a culture flat rate system which would be socially acceptable. So we had 3 questions to clarify. Do people support such an idea? Because without social support, anything can fail. And ask a question: if there is a support, who supports it, and what they support? Because this is a quite complex question. Does what they support make any economic sense? Because if it doesn't, if the math doesn't work out for rights holders or intermediaries, then it makes no sense to think in these terms. And is it legally feasible? So I would like to present the findings for these questions. A small insight into the methodology. So the task we had to deal with was how to translate a highly complex legal policy issue into something that can be asked from copyright lay people. There are many ways to involve lay people in the policy process. We have seen a couple of minutes ago that public consultation is one way to elicit feedback from interested parties. We don't think it's the best way, because it's very difficult to say anything about the representativity of those results. So we tried to come up with something that would enable a representative feedback on highly complex policy issues. So we tried to break down this compensation scheme into product features, like a Spotify product. How much would it cost? What would be included in it? Music or films or books? What can you do within that license? Download, share, maybe modify. Would your usage be monitored? And so on, and so on, and so on. And we created products, more than 650 of them out of these different configurations of ACS. And we asked a representative sample of Dutch people, 5,000 of them exactly, to choose between 2 slightly different versions of an ICS and the none option, which would mean that we prefer the status quo. We are not interested in any of the ACS proposals. We also asked them about their media consumption habits, just to understand who they are and how they consume culture at the moment, what kind of legal and illegal, online and offline, paying and free channels they use to consume culture. So this is the experimental setup, and what we've learned first is that there is a very strong division lines among people on how they consume culture. The older people are either don't consume culture at all or only through TV, or if they are more educated, they read print books, but they don't use the digital channels. These are the non-consumers and the bookworms, accounting for nearly half of the total sample. The rest are younger and either use free music, use the internet to consume free music like YouTube or Spotify free, and they sometimes buy CDs too that they like, or they are hardcore digital consumers who either use piratical channels or not. And that was also something that confirmed previous findings, that pirates are as serious legal digital consumers as non-pirates, with the exception that they also use some piratical access channels to complement their consumption. So these are the 5 groups that we were able to identify, and they are very well defined. So this was not some fuzzy boundaries. These are very strict boundaries among them. And so the next thing we asked is that, okay, given that there are these 5 groups, how supportive are they for any change in the copyright system? How supportive they are for the status quo? And so when we asked them to choose between the none option and the 2 ACS versions, we measured how many times they chose the none option. And for those who always chose the none option, never chose the ACS option, we thought that they are the closest to the status quo. They don't want any change. They are not interested in any of the ACS proposals, however we formulated. And there were others who always chose something other than the status quo. And within this spectrum, we tried to place these 5 groups, and this is the result. And it is a bit counterintuitive, because the people who are most interested in the change are those who consume through legal channels the most, which is strange if you believe that the current legal offerings, Spotify, Netflix, Deezer, whatnot, pay-per-view TV, is so good, then you wouldn't expect digital consumers to support a change in the status quo. The same with the pirates. If we think, and that in the Netherlands, the enforcement is simply non-existing, so it's not like the German situation. If you think that pirates are so happy with their pirate base and cat PH websites then, or Popcorn Times, then they wouldn't be supportive of a paying alternative. They are. Those who are not supportive are the non-consumers and the bookworms, those people who are not part of the digital era. They are not part of the digital ecosystem, but they will die quite soon. And everyone else on this chart, everyone else in the society is very open to change, experiment with things other than the status quo. So that's something that's a representative evidence, an evidence based on representative data in support of a change that is based on a license model. We also asked them what would be the most preferred version, and across the board, including everyone, this would be the most preferred license package. They want to download. They are not interested in sharing, or they are not interested in modification rights. They want to download music and films and TV programs from a temporarily restricted catalog, meaning that they are willing to go for a grace period of 6 months, where they don't have access to works only through shops and paying websites. But after some grace period, they want to have access of a full catalog without them being monitored for their usage, and without any guarantees on the minimum share for the artists when the redistribution money is coming in for a relatively low price. I will tell about the price later. And this preference, this is the most beloved ACS package, tells some interesting stories. One is that people are willing to tolerate grace periods. They understand that artists have to break even on the market, but they are not willing to tolerate the Netflix problem that they don't have access to a full catalog. That was Reed Hastings' problem a couple of days ago, expressed that Netflix users are disappointed. It won't go away. Yeah, right? The second is that despite all this hype about user-generated content and remix culture and whatnot, people are not willing to pay for those rights. It's either because it's not enforced. I understand that panorama rights are important from a legal or a political perspective. From a practical perspective, people are not willing to invest to have those rights. But they are willing to pay for a package. They're willing to pay more for a package that respects their privacy. So privacy matters. And given that they are not willing to pay more for a package that would give at least half of the monies to artists and performers, I think that artists and performers' ability to explain that they are being screwed over in the current system has failed. So they have a terrible PR problem on their hands. Okay. Does it make any economic sense? We made some calculations. We already have the confirmed calculations for the music industry. We are working on the calculations for the audiovisual industry. So we chose the most preferred music-only package. We were only interested in the music market, in the Dutch music market, and that's the most preferred music package. Download and share. So when it comes to only music, people prefer sharing. Music from a temporary restricted catalog with a fixed revenue to the artist without monitoring. And we asked people, we calculated how much would be the average willingness to pay under two scenarios. One is that the state statutory imposes this ACS on every internet subscription in the Netherlands. In that case, the average willingness to pay would be 9.25 euros per month for such a package. This would be the average mean willingness to pay within the Netherlands. And if you multiply that by the number of months in a year and the number of households in the Netherlands, that would generate 625 million euros per year for the music industry alone. On the other hand, the Dutch music market, the recorded music sales, net recorded sales in the Netherlands was around 143 million euros per year. So there's this huge gap between what the music industry currently does in the Netherlands, that's 1.7 euro per month, and what the people are willing to pay for have access, unlimited access for the music. That's more than 9 euros. So any price between these 1.7 and 9.2 would be economically beneficial for both the consumers and the music rights holders. There are hundreds of millions of euros lying on the table, and we are losing it every day. We tested it under a voluntary, so it's not statutorily imposed, but it's an option that you can participate in. It would generate another 400 million euros per year for the industry. So the question is, if there are millions, hundreds of millions of euros left on the table every year, why don't we share it? Consumers and producers, rights holders and artists together. Why do we share? Why do we waste millions and hundreds of millions of euros per year on enforcement, which a license would kill as a necessity? You don't need to enforce if all the illegal uses are licensed, right? You don't have to spend public and private resources on an enforcement when there is no enforceable infringement. If you free people to download and share and maybe modify non-commercially, privately, then you also remove the legal liability of non-commercial intermediaries. Not like the Pirate Bay, because the Pirate Bay is quite commercial, but for the likes of Wikipedia, who do not, or Wikimedia Foundation, who do not show advertisement. Why don't we, such a license would remove the legal liability of non-commercial intermediaries and would free up a huge innovation potential in this middle layer, which is currently being monopolized by a few American companies who gain exclusive control both to consumers and to catalogs. We don't want that because we see what's happening. We see the artist pushback. We see the complaints. We see the uncertainty that these middlemen may or may not be able to provide the remuneration necessary for cultural production. And we see how they abuse their privileged position. Having an ACS would remove that, because then all the middlemen wouldn't be competing on their exclusive chance to negotiate contracts with rights holders, right? They would have to compete with other things like service. And we would also make some consumers happier than they are now, because we would move away from the status quo. Legal analysis, does it make any sense legally? We are in the middle of finding that out. The qualified, cautious answer is that there are some formulations which would pass the Burns three-step test as it is now, especially that this whole system would generate extra revenues for rights holders. But the real question is it a technical legal problem? Do we have to prove that it passes the three-step test? Or is it a political problem that we have to convince each and every stakeholder and party that this is an alternative worth considering? And I believe in the latter. So for us, the question is, maybe the Kulturflatrate debate, especially in Germany, is at least a decade old. But maybe at this point of time, its time has come again. And maybe we need to think again about both, this idea in particular, and how to better engage consumers, copyright lay people in the copyright process more systematically in a better way, given the European agenda within that domain. So, an invitation, we're going to organize a symposium in mid-July in Amsterdam to discuss all these issues, discuss the economics, the legalese, and the political, social domains in which the alternative compensation models can be inserted into the copyright reform agenda. These are the already confirmed guests. We're going to have wonderful panels, so please consider yourself invited. And we hopefully see each other in Amsterdam, and we can discuss in more details, more than just in a half an hour talk. Is it really an alternative worth considering when we are moving forward? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Balázs, for a great presentation. Any question from the audience? I have a microphone here. Raise your hand.
Yeah, just a very simple one. First of all, thank you very much for a great presentation. It was very interesting. Is your study available for pirates like us? The study, is it available for pirates like us?
Absolutely. There are several papers being written up. One has been accepted for publication for the Journal of Cultural Economics. I can share it with you. The other is under review. Send me an email, I will send it to you, and they will be available in open access journals very soon.
Thank you very much. You already said that the main barrier is the music or the media industry. Are there any ideas yet as to how to convince them that that is a good idea?
That's a very good question, because for a while I thought that if one has convincing numbers, then that's a good way to discuss these ideas. So if I'm able to show that you can make extra 600 million euros per year, yay, then everyone will be on board. But that's not the case. When we start to discuss with not necessarily rights holders, but the representatives of those who represent rights holders, then this whole discussion becomes very fluid, like trying to catch a ball of mercury. So I say, here's extra money. Okay, but it's all about us not being able to control distribution. But you're not controlling distribution at the moment, right? So it would give some extra. It wouldn't diminish your control. Yeah, but then again, you know, how I will make money? I showed you how you make money. But then, yeah, and it's always, the counter argument is always shifting. So I'm not quite sure when I'm trying to engage with rights holders. It's like, what is the argument that what is the argument? What I can do is to try to come up with scientifically tested methods that try to cover the ground bit by bit. So we were trying to cover the ground of money and remuneration, and that is more or less covered. Control is a different issue. It's happening now. It's not us that are covering that, but it's Spotify and YouTube and all the others who are covering the control issue. And I hope I can only trust that it's a rational discourse at the end of the day. That I'm an enlightenment person in that sense.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Alex. Hey. A lot of interesting questions remain open with your talk. I was quite impressed by the numbers, but there is the first legal problem for the cultural flat rate. You mentioned there are a lot of people who are not interested using digital copies, so using music digitally. So the first legal question is, why do you want to pay them for stuff they won't use?
That's a very good question. And if you think from a market perspective, it's super unjust to make someone pay for something that he or she is not using. If you think from the perspective of culture being a public good, then this question goes away, because you are paying for military defense, even if no one is attacking you at the moment, right? So you pay the taxes for public education, even if you don't have a kid in the school system. You pay the money to finance the Staatsoper, the opera house, even if you don't like opera. It's because you think that there is a public value in financing things. And what you're doing here is paying tax for the reproduction of culture. And that's beneficial even if you don't give a damn about some of the artists that are being reproduced through this system. So that's the radical shift in this, and that we take the financing of culture, take it away from the market, and make it the public good, which it is in theory. And in that sense, I think it makes a lot of sense to think about this as a public good problem. And this is what we used in the methodology as well. Treat it as a public good. Use the same methods as people, scientists, policymakers, or governments try to value other public goods, like a park, or a clean air, or a clean water, or whatnot. How much does it worth to you as a taxpayer to have a park in your neighborhood?
Thank you very much. I would like to ask, on the side of the artists, are there actually criteria which they have to fulfill to get into the system of the Kulturflatrate? Like, what's the border to get into the system?
The again, from what we try to do to cover the artist is artist participation affects the catalog. So if you let artist participation to be voluntary, you end up with a fragmented catalog at the end, because you will never know who decided to be part of the license and who doesn't. And we measured that consumers are not really willing to tolerate incomplete catalogs. They are really fed up with systems that they pay for, and then they go there and then it's not there. Their favorite artist or the song or the TV show is not there. And they don't want to pay for something like that. They do because they don't have another option, but they prefer a complete catalog. So from the artist's perspective, the participation seems like should be mandatory, right? Because that's the only way to guarantee a full catalog. The only ease in that, or the only compromise in that, is that people are seem to be very much willing to tolerate the fact that they only have access to something free, after a grace period of like 6 months. And that's, I think that's a fair deal. You as an artist have 6 months to break even in the record store or in the iTunes market, and then it becomes public good, and that's something that can be worked out from both sides.
Balázs, thank you. I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you again for this great talk.